Welcome to the summer edition of the North Attleborough Electric Show. Peter Gay along with NAED General Manager Jay Moynihan. Jay, let me begin with an article I read in the Sun Chronicle. It was actually August 11th. People in Rhode Island very upset. Their electric rates, they've been told, are going to be rising. I guess it went before the state legislature. They had to approve. Is that something North Attleborough Electric customers should be concerned about?
No, not right away. As I understand it, the National Grid asked for a 51% increase, and it was before the Department of Public Utilities there in Rhode Island. I think they ultimately decided on an 18% increase. That's not an issue for rate customers in NAD. As I understand it, one of the issues that is before the consideration in Rhode Island, and it is a factor that we face also, is what they call capacity costs. So in the world of power, when a ratepayer pays their bill, they are paying not only for the electricity they use, they are also making a payment that goes to the system to make sure that generators are compensated even if the generation is not running at that time. Because if you end up in a situation where it's a very, very hot day and they need additional generation within the New England market, you have to have those generators going. The way those generators are paid is on the basis of an annual auction, which is done 3 years prior to. So there are projected rising costs in what's called capacity for this year, starting in July 1st, and next year in capacity costs. So in the area of Rhode Island, as I read the article and understand the matter, one of the big issues is those increased capacity costs that are there. Also, a reminder too that in Rhode Island, National Grid is an investor-owned utility, so they have obligations to their ratepayers for return on investment that they need to pay to their investors on top of everything else. That's not the case here in North Attleborough.
No, I know it's been, a couple of years since the rates here in North Attleborough have been updated.
Yeah, so our plan is that the rates are tweaked every 3 years. So toward that end, the rates were last done in October 2015. It's projected to be revisited again and updated by October of 2018. So toward that end, at their last meeting, the Board of Electric Commissioners reviewed the current rates with the firm that helped develop them, Utility Financial Services, and their president, Mark Beauchamp. We'll be out soon with a request for proposal from firms for 2018. That'll include a cost of service study of the expenses of the electric department by allocation, grouping residential, commercial, industrial, municipal, and then a proposed rate adjustment probably in March, and then board approval in October. My expectation is that it is more of a tweaking rather than any substantive changes in rates or what customers will see.
And people would certainly like hearing that. NAAD, whenever you say the word audit, people get nervous. You think IRS, but being audited for the reliability at the substation, I understand.
Yes, I get nervous too. So the department has obligations in the industry and to the bulk electric system to make sure that the substation is operating consistent with industry rules and regulations.
Sherman Substation?
We're talking about Sherman Substation.
On Landry
That's
Avenue.
correct.
Yep.
So North Attleborough has one single substation, Sherman Substation, and we have responsibilities industry-wide to make sure that the station operates efficiently and effectively and doesn't affect the bulk electric system. So toward that end, we have two standards that are required, industry standards for protective relays. And we are audited every 6 years. We were audited this year, and actually as of yesterday, we're informed that we had received a clean audit, and that they were impressed with the way we were documenting information, maintaining the equipment, and that will be coming forward to the department in a few weeks, the final written report.
Charter Commission, I know on Wednesday night, August 23rd, you appeared before the Charter Commission, and let's face it, one of the big decisions they're going to have to make is, does NAED in the future, at least in the proposal that voters will cast ballots, does NAED remain an independent organization, or does it fall under the jurisdiction of the town?
That's true. So it was. I was appreciative of the Charter Commission inviting me to come in and share some thoughts. Basically, what I tried to do for the Charter Commission is to differentiate for them the North Attleborough Electric Department as a municipal light plant as compared to municipal government. North Attleborough Electric Department is a separate entity. It is governed by, as I tried to point out to them, under separate statutes. It has its own budget process. It has its own procurement process. It has its own contracts. It has its own attorneys. It operates as a more akin to an investor-owned utility or than it does to municipal government. Municipal government operates under various statutes. Call it Mass General Law Chapter 39, going forward into Mass General Law 44, then to 49, different municipal positions. Really, as I tried to explain it, the municipal light plant is more akin to being a cousin to town government, municipal government, than it is being a component of it as we would know it. So what we discussed was my view, and my view only as general manager, that it would be in the best interest of the light plant and its ratepayers and customers if it was maintained as a separate entity and not incorporated within the charter proposal. We could not achieve, I said to the Charter Commission, in my judgment, the kind of recognition and upgrades of the system and the way we responded if we were a part of the municipal government, because of the independence and the fact that the statutes allow us to do things that are different than town government.
Thank you. General Manager Jay Moynihan, GM Corner, here on the NAED show. We're in the office of System Engineer Peter Shipman. Peter, I know one of the projects we've been talking about now for a while, the upgrade of the Sherman Substation. I drove by this past weekend. I took a look over. I don't see anything happening. My assumption is things are happening. We're just not seeing it yet.
That's correct. So we just actually got a contractor on board for the overall project, which was the final step in the procurement process. So we've got all of our equipment lined up. Everything's going to start being delivered very soon. Our contractor will be on site in a couple of weeks for a pre-construction meeting, and then at the end of September into October, you'll start to see activity at the substation. So some of the things that you'll see right away are equipment being staged, some different materials being moved around. The real fun starts once we have the first deliveries of major equipment. So October and November, we're scheduled to get our large pieces of equipment. One of them is the transformer, and the transformer will be replacing a bunch of equipment that's existing at the substation now. That transformer is fairly large, and it's a production trying to get it in. So I'm sure there'll be a little bit of an interest from the public seeing something like that come into the station. So typically those things, they'll travel over the road as best they can, but they have to go in the middle of the night, and there's certain routes that they can travel and certain bridges at certain times. So
Where's it coming in from?
it's coming in from Georgia.
Wow.
Yeah, so sometimes if the transformer's too large, which isn't in our case, they'll have to barge it up. So that they don't have to do, or they'll have to go by rail. And once again, that they don't have to do. So right now it's being planned on being loaded onto a truck and driven up here.
So what costs more, the actual unit or getting it up here?
Well, actually, that's part of the cost itself. So included in, so the transformer, just to give you an idea of how much it costs, about $850,000 piece of equipment, which includes the transportation, delivery, and set. The contractor will actually take that piece of equipment and wire it up. That wiring is intricate. So you have a lot of wires that have to go, it's wires, cable, large cable that has to go from the transformer into a new switchgear. The switchgear is basically take your circuit panel, your breaker panel in your house, and increase the size, 500 times, and it's the size of a building. So it's going to, you walk in. We use the term circuit breaker because that's what it does. It breaks circuits, and these are the circuits that feed the different parts of the town. So we have 11 circuits right now. 3 of them are being served from an old piece of switchgear. That piece of switchgear is getting retired. It's going to be hooked up and reintegrated into the new gear, and that'll serve the entire town. Hopefully, we're planning to energize by the end of first quarter 2018. And when I say energize, it's basically turning it on. We cut over. We literally cut the old circuits out, splice, and tie the new circuits in. So it'll be very involved. We'll have a lot of underground crews working to try to get these cables, which exit the substation via underground getaways, and they rise up on the streets, Landry Ave, and then they go down Town Street, and then they start hitting different parts of the town.
Now, this can be done during the winter months?
Yeah, so obviously digging in the substation isn't ideal once it starts to freeze, but hopefully all the site work is done by the end of December or earlier. So the contractor's motivated to get that done as quickly as possible because they don't want to have to bring in additional ground warming blankets or anything like that. So the more that they can get done up front, the concrete work can set without needing to cover it and blanket that. Yeah, they got a fair bit of work to do before the frost really sets in. So, and they're a lump sum price. So here's the price to do the work, get it done.
And once again, the ultimate goal is reliability.
Yeah, so the bottom line to this project is we want to actually take our older equipment, which is 1960s vintage at this point, and replace it. A lot of this equipment can easily last 40 years plus. The term, they don't make it like they used to. This type of equipment, they have to make it like they used to. And you pay for that. So you pay for that type of material, you pay for that type of equipment, labor, and installation. But yes, we're upgrading our oldest pieces of equipment, going with the newest piece of equipment, and hopefully we'll get 40, 60 years out of it.
We certainly hope so. We're going to talk to him about Amazon Prime free shipping up here from Georgia. Peter Schiffman, System Engineer. We're in the office of Project Manager Chris Mitchell. Chris, I saw the presentation to the Board of Selectmen about the new streetlights that North Attleborough will soon have. LED lights. To the average person, will they notice a difference?
They will notice some difference. Lights are a little bit less orange in color than some of those that are out now. Short answer is yes. Primarily, though, the difference will be noticeable in eventually in billing. For the town, it's going to be significantly less expensive to pay for streetlights because they do pay for them. The LEDs do consume less power. Less power, lower billing.
Now, I know at home, when they phased out the old-fashioned light bulbs, now with the LED lights, the lights are supposed to last for 12, 14 years. Will the town notice a difference there as well?
Yes, they will. Actually, it's really going to be more our crews that will notice a difference since we're tasked with changing out streetlights if they fail. And these have a rather lengthy warranty on them, which is good.
So take us through where we are in the process right now. I understand going out to bid, or has that already happened?
The procurement of the LEDs is done essentially. However, the labor part of it is what is going out to bid. That's going out to bid on the 30th of this month, and we are going to engage an outside contractor to do the bulk of the work. The grant that we're working with, which we're a participant in, has a time limit as to when the work has to be done by. That's going to be about 10 months from now that it needs to be wrapped up, June 2018. Now, our crews, if they were doing no other work, would be able to get this done, but that's not the case. There's a work plan in place for them, and of course we have inevitably matters that'll pop up that the crew has to go out and address. So we are going out to obtain labor to have the lights installed. That will be streetlights, really. It will not be the 400-watt floodlights, though. Those are not covered by the grant. We did not have enough funds in the grant to replace those. There are another set of lights that NAED staff will be working to install in addition to the 400s. They'll be working on these on a time available basis. So our crew will be involved in the project, no question about that. That's going out to bid again on the 30th. We should be awarding at the end of September. Contractor should be beginning in October. So we will be fairly tightly scheduled.
Now, as I understand it, the grant, and first of all, is that a state grant or a federal grant?
It's a state grant.
State grant only pays for the fixtures and the sensors and the controllers. The installation is not covered under the grant.
Correct. Materials only, and 50% of the material cost. The other 50% is being assumed by NAED. In applying for the grant, the decision was made to essentially give some help to the town long term in that, again, the LEDs should significantly lower the cost of street lighting to the town, where the town is cash strapped. This is not a bad thing.
That certainly seems like a good thing. So you mentioned 10 months. 10 months from now, which would be, June of 2018, everything should be done?
That's the theory.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot of work to do. So we're going to see these crews installing these new lights right through the dead of winter.
Pretty much, yes. That they're going to be working in the roadways. Shouldn't be a major issue. We will have standard safety steps in place. North Attleborough Electric has its own safety manual. Outside contractors are responsible to working to the requirements of that manual, where North Attleborough has police details typically assigned to crews. You can expect to see that generally as well.
Now, I have read in the past in some communities, residents, the light's too bright, the color of the light coming into my house, I don't like it. Can we expect those type of phone calls?
I would not be surprised. Are the LEDs adjustable? Yes, there are ways to adjust them a little bit in terms of their intensity, focus of the light and such. Yes, we do anticipate there will be calls. Frankly, those will probably be directed to both NAED and to, I would expect, the town hall as well.
As long as they don't call me.
Well, we can help you with that.
Chris Mitchell, project manager here at North Attleborough Electric. We're in the office of System Engineer John Miller. John, solar, it's certainly been talked about in North Attleborough. I know one of the Board of Selectmen meetings this summer, solar was talked about, and it was actually a presentation by Energy New England, I think it was.
Yeah, Energy New England is a consulting firm that helps us with power supply purchases and recommendations. They do some studies for us in different things. If we go back to 2009, we had them do a study on the landfill. It was capped. It's a big open area that's not useful for much as such. So we were thinking about possibly the concept of putting solar. At that time when we did the study, the costs were prohibitively high. What's really kind of interesting, though, is the price of solar has come down significantly. The technology has matured. So we're deciding to look at that again. So we've recently hired E&E or commissioned another study to update the information and the pricing and so forth and the pros and the cons of installing a system at the landfill.
This may be a question you can't answer, and if so, just say so. I seem to remember one of the things that might not have been in North Attleborough, it might have been in another community. One of the issues about putting solar panels on a landfill, things are decomposing and the ground may settle, which then the panels aren't aligned.
Correct. There's a number of issues. It's not just simply just install it and it's done. So you have to look at everything. The landfill has decomposed somewhat, so it's a little more stable, I would guess. The The way we would install it, we would put it, it would be sit on top of the landfill, probably with what's called ballasted. You either put cinder blocks or probably they have these trays that you could fill with concrete or sand. So they're not really attached to the landfill, so they have the ability to move somewhat. They probably have to be adjusted over time a little bit, but basically they would just sit there and not cause any problems. And technology, again, is very, very good. We happen to have 14 projects in town right now that are private, but we're moving towards possibly doing something publicly, with a publicly owned, North Attleborough owned project.
Which I never knew until we talked earlier that, out of all the power that North Attleborough Electric supplies, 38% is non-fossil generated.
It is. We do very well. We're constantly looking for more resources that are less polluting, or I won't say non-polluting, but as low as possible, best environmental, as well as balance against cost. So 38% is totally non-carbon, is the greenhouse gases. And a majority of the rest is actually natural gas, which in and of itself, if you're going to burn anything, natural gas is probably the most environmentally least harmful, I would say. Puts out the least amount of carbon dioxide for the amount of energy you get. So we heavily into natural gas as much as possible, try to find economic resources in the wind, hydro, and solar category. So
Now, I know people don't like wind turbines in their backyard, and
Right.
it would have to literally be in their backyard, but I do know as a fact that nearby Watery Hill is the highest point above sea level in, I believe, Bristol County or southeastern
what I understand.
Massachusetts.
Yeah.
I've been up at the high school on a February night after a basketball team. It's windy, it's cold. Wind not a possibility, or too many complaints about the noise?
it's a possibility. We haven't explored it within the town. We have not explored it. We have projects that around New England that we purchased pieces of. They're bigger projects. Economies of scale aren't good for a single small windmill.
That's true.
We've looked in the past and we thought the wind wasn't enough and sustained enough to make it economic. But again, this is another technology that's matured. Prices have come down. It's probably something we will look at again. We certainly we like to control as much of our fate as possible, and that would be one way to do that. So yeah, something we would look at. We haven't done it recently though.
We mentioned the 38% of non-fossil fuel generating sources currently being used by North Attleborough Electric.
Yep.
I guess the advantage of having your own solar farm, for lack of a better term, is, other than the initial investment, you're not paying for that power coming in.
Yeah, roughly half of our power supply at the moment comes from what's interchanges with the grid, which means somewhere out there's power plants running, something called the New England Power Pool, turns them off and on, and we pay that average price of what those units cost. We don't control the process. We don't control the maintenance, the scheduling, the acquisition of fuel, and so forth. The other half, but it's been pretty good over years, so it's a good resource to balance against everything else. The other half of our power supply, we have direct contracts and ownership for a variety of resources. That means we sit at the table to discuss exactly how they operate, and we have a lot of control. It works out very good. It's kind of like buying stocks where you have to have a balanced portfolio. You want a balanced portfolio of energy resources. One might go up and another might go down, and the whole goal is to keep everything stable, as well as low cost, but also stable so it doesn't increase in the future.
Which certainly customers of North Attleborough Electric, ratepayers, certainly like hearing that. System engineer, John Miller. We've moved into another portion of the conference room here at North Attleborough Electric, and we're seated with Operations Manager Gene Allen. Gene, summer still has a few days remaining. Let's take us through some of the projects that you were able to complete or still working on this summer.
Well, we have a lot of long-term projects. Some of them are multi-year projects. The line crew was able to work on Park Street this year, Whiting Street, and Everett Street, getting all those sections of the lines ready for the cross-country section, which we're going to be moving into later on this year, early next year, which will bring that circuit back to the substation, and that will feed the western part of town, a section over there. to help reduce the load on other individual circuits over there. Eventually, so that we have all of our circuits loaded at 50%, which allows us a lot of flexibility and improves reliability tremendously. In addition to that, we've done a lot of our annual maintenance programs. We've done the underground manhole inspections, which we're looking for infrared, corona, any discharges or any problems.
Which actually I think we're looking at pictures of.
Yes.
One of the pictures looks like it was on the Titanic, but
No,
that
not
was an
quite.
infrared
That was an
picture.
infrared
And
photo.
one of them is bright white.
Yeah, what that does is when you do an infrared image, what it will do is it'll look at temperature. So when you see that bright white, that was a higher temperature on that particular elbow versus some of the other elbows. So it gives you an indication that that is running hot. So what we would do is then we would go in, most times we'd be able to just pull that elbow apart, clean it, check the probes, check if there's anything that's wrong, and then reassemble it, and then we go back and we check it after to make sure that the repair has worked.
Interesting. So the underground work, what part of town is that?
That was town-wide. We did
Okay.
about 140 some manholes. We checked every manhole with a company that came in and did the work for us, H.R. Hurley. And then we also had another company come in, Cable-Wise, and they came in and actually tested from each manhole every segment of wire. So from manhole to manhole, you don't know it's underground. So they have a way of coming in and checking for partial discharge and checking to see what condition that particular cable is in. And the report came back good. It was the second year that we have done that testing. And it just reinforces the condition of the cable. We just started doing this program last year as a pilot. It worked out well, and we're out testing cable that's been in the ground for 20 plus years, just to see where it is in its life. Most cable is good underground for 40, maybe 50 years. We just want to make sure that if we see any abnormalities, we can go out and check it ahead of time before there's an outage to make sure that we have good reliability.
How about overhead wires? Checked on that as well?
Yeah, overhead, we had a company come in and they did the infrared and corona for the entire distribution system. We came up with about 8 items that we had. Most of them were loose connections. So again, it identifies a problem before the problem actually occurs. We go out, we make that repair, and we move on.
Cliff Drive, I know that's in the works.
Cliff Drive is completely designed at this point, and we're getting the bidding documents ready.
Now, what needs to be done there?
Actually, we over the last year and a half, we've secured the right to pass underneath National Grid's transmission lines. And what we're going to be doing is installing a conduit system that will allow for a northern loop with the fiber system. I believe Chris may have talked to you in the past about the fiber loops that we're looking to do, which makes the fiber system more resilient, gives us better reliability, and will allow us in the future to actually utilize that in some of the operations of some of the monitoring devices on the electric system, in addition to possibly doing a circuit in the future also.
You mentioned cross-country and the work being done, Park Street, Whiting Street, Everett Street. Briefly, explain to people, the cross-country portion of the project.
Well, there used to be a line that went from Whiting Street to the substation, which used to feed Whiting Street Substation.
Substation on Landry Avenue.
No,
Oh,
the
I'm sorry.
substation on Landry Avenue
Okay.
is the Sherman Substation.
Yep.
Yeah, that used to feed another substation over
Okay.
at Whiting Street. That's a cross-country line
Okay.
that we're looking to reutilize. This section on Cliff Drive is actually a crossing from the end of Cliff Drive up to the park. So what we would do is we'd actually go underground. We'd install a conduit system. That's the actual work that we're looking to do this year. We're not looking to install any wire. It could be something that it allows for an additional tie. It allows for a fiber loop to be done in the next year or two, and it provides just reliability and resiliency for the future.
Reliability, that's one of the reasons why when there's a major storm, people in North Attleborough don't lose their electricity because of projects like the projects completed this summer.